Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. My name is Eric Bramlett. I am joined by Tammy Melchien. Tammy, how you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome. Let's talk about this brand new series, and it's a series that marks the 1-year anniversary of the One Initiative, and it's called The Power of One. And it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to reflect on where we've been so far with the One Initiative and celebrate that. But it's also an opportunity to be able to re-engage, and especially new attenders. You know, the reality of the situation is a ton of them, you know, they just weren't there. They were not a part of it, and they've heard some things here and there in offering moments and video pieces. But this is a great opportunity to engage new attenders. So it's a 4-week series. It's leading up to a pledge moment. This is one of those generosity strategies that when you mark the 1-year anniversary of a 2-year initiative, you give all of your attenders an opportunity to pledge again. For some of them, it'll be again. So that is kind of the big moment that hits in week 4. But briefly, why don't you talk just a little bit, Tammy, about what the overall series is doing, where we're headed, and what we hope to accomplish.
No. So while we're aiming for those goals with the One Initiative, we decided to base the series on the life of Abraham. So it's going to be 4 weeks looking at different snapshots of his life and how really what his experience was in his faith journey can parallel our journey and our faith journey as well.
Very good. All right. Well, I love that. So let's dive into week 1. Week 1, the power of one mission is the theme for week 1 as we kick off the series. And so where are we headed with Abraham?
Well, part of what we have to do in this week 2 is a little bit of recap of one for everyone, so we'll have to keep that in mind. Yeah. And this is going to be a video cast, so this will be Dave doing this. But when we come to Abraham here, it's the beginning stories from Genesis 12, Genesis 15 of when God calls him to this journey of faith. So in Genesis 12, when he's still called Abram, which always makes this so much harder to tell.
I know.
But
silly Bible, silly double names.
God calls him to leave everything that's familiar and start out on this journey of faith, even though there's more questions. He has more questions than he has answers. And even already, too, when we get to Genesis 15, he's already a little bit like, you know, what is going on? Is this really happening? And God takes him out and tells him to look at the stars in the sky and to realize that he's given him this promise that he is going to make him into this family, and this family is going to impact the entire world. And so when we then kind of look at tying it to ourselves, we realize that the One Initiative really is an invitation to a faith journey. It's an invitation to step out. And of course, there are lots of unknowns and lots of uncertainties for us personally when we do that. But it's going to be an encouragement for everyone to follow God in that and to trust that he is making us into a family, family win, that he's making us into a family that he wants to impact the whole world through us. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
That's good. And you know, I mean, one of the angles that we're definitely going to look at, because it really kind of came up in conversation through this past year, and I think when you reflect on even current events and you start thinking about like kind of where we are in this crazy mixed up world, how much more important it becomes for us to view each other as one family, kind of regardless of our background, regardless of our race, whatever the specifics would be. This really also kind of becomes an opportunity for us to declare, we are one family, and the things that we are pursuing here are for the family win.
Yes.
All right, so week 2.
Way to remember that.
Yeah, anytime. It theoretically is what I'm here for. Every now and then I get it right. Week 2 is the power of one decision. And so now we're continuing the narrative with Abraham and Sarah and his family.
And this week is the one that we're going to really humanize Abraham. And, because sometimes we read these Bible characters and we're like, oh, they're these amazing people. They did these things. And how do I relate to that? But we have the story of where Abraham and Sarah begin to doubt a little bit that God's going to come through. After all, he got the promise when he was 75. And in the story that we're looking at here, I think he's like 86.
Yeah.
And if you look ahead, the promise of a son isn't actually fulfilled until he's 99. So we're talking a lot of years of faithfulness and in that. But in this
faithfulness from a certain point of view.
Yes. Yeah, not really from the story's point of view. Because in the story, basically, Abraham and Sarah take matters into their own hands and decide they're going to figure out how to produce an heir through another woman.
Yeah.
So this
It's
is
not exactly a shortcut, but it is
No,
a shortcut.
It is a shortcut, yeah. So in some ways, we want to relate this part of Abraham's story to our humanity because, and maybe start broader than just the one initiative, but so many times we maybe feel like we've faltered in our faith. Like maybe we made that commitment to be baptized and now it's 9 months later and the things that we thought that were really going to change in our lives and we still feel stuck. Or maybe we've made a decision that kind of betrays that. And so I think most of us can relate with that feeling of stumbling and a lot of the guilt and maybe the shame that can come with that.
Right.
But we want this week to be encouragement to those who feel like they have faltered, to understand you're only one decision from being back on the right track. And so this is an encouragement to get off the mat and to take the next step forward in faith. And we will tie that then also into the One Initiative, because at this 1 year mark, there's probably a lot of people, probably nobody you know.
Nobody you know,
But
or
a lot of
nobody that
people-
is you.
that made this commitment and then maybe have not really kind of been in line with where
Right, yeah, they get the letters in the mail and it shows the percentage, it shows where we should be versus maybe where we are. And, a lot of times people can take that and really head down a negative path with that. And so this is an opportunity to pick them back up and say,
hey,
it's going to be okay.
one decision can move you forward in faith. And so this is hopefully an encouragement week to that.
Yeah, and for Pete's sake, don't try to have a baby with somebody else.
Yes, that's not the
If
takeaway.
God said that you're going to have a
Not
baby
the
with just the two
takeaway.
of you. All right, well, I'm glad we got that settled. So now we can move on to week 3. Week 3, probably the worst Sunday of all church history because it is time change Sunday when we lose that hour. But fortunately, it's not Easter this year. Praise Jesus. Nonetheless, we're still going to do it. And this week we'll be talking about the power of one action.
Okay.
So talk to us a little bit about that for
Well,
Abraham.
this one we're looking at probably the most dramatic story from Abraham's life. It's also the trickiest story from Abraham's life.
Yeah.
The story when God tells him to go and sacrifice Isaac, and I'll hint, he doesn't have
Spoiler
to go through with it. Yeah, spoiler alert.
The
But
ram gets it.
I think the angle that we're going to look at in this one, because with this story, you're always kind of like, okay, God was testing Abraham. But, was that really what was happening? I mean, in some sense, yes, it was. But, did Abraham really need to prove something to God? Or was this an opportunity for Abraham to prove something to himself? And we've talked a lot in the One Initiative about what does it mean to make God number one, to let God make the list, to, the stuff from Soldier Field when we had the advanced commitment night and all that.
Right.
And we're going to revisit this here and looking at, the One Initiative and making this commitment of generosity. It's not about proving something to God, but it may be that we need it to prove to ourselves that God is number one. And,
Right.
it gives us an opportunity to demonstrate that.
Yeah. And it seems to me too, as we're getting closer and closer to week 4, I mean, you can kind of see that we're heading towards, what it looks like to make a sacrifice. What, and obviously this is a symbolic act of, a test towards sacrifice with his son. But during this whole series, each week we'll be encouraging and communicating, there is an opportunity for you to make God number one. There is an opportunity for him to be number one in your life through your generosity, and that happens on week 4. So as we get closer and closer, be thinking in terms of really, that the vision casting and the driving force will be towards, that particular Sunday. And this one takes it in a very dramatic way, I think, as it's making its way closer and closer to that day. All right, very good. It's 4 weeks. It's not 5 weeks, just 4. So we got to land the plane with week 4 and talking about the power of one family. And this is the One Commitment Sunday for the 1 year anniversary.
So in this one, we're going to fast forward to the New Testament and almost tell the end of the story. So when, there's several passages in the New Testament and Paul's letters that talk about Abraham, the man of faith. And, when you look at the Hebrews 11, I mean, basically you go to the end of the story and you find out, oh, God really did make him into a great nation. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like, and maybe there's something to think about this even in series graphic or something like that they're, the series starts, the story starts with God taking them out and looking up at the numerous stars in the sky. Mm-hmm. And then in Hebrews, Hebrews 12, it says, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. So there's that imagery there. But what we'll also see in the Galatians passage is that, who are these people? Who is this family?
His descendants?
Yeah.
Right.
And we find out that it's us.
Yeah.
That we are the heirs, and we are the result of that promise. And so, in some senses, those of us who are following Jesus, those of us who believe, we are Abraham's children. We already are that. And so, in this series, in this message, we want to say, okay, well, what does it mean then to live into that, to be that family, and to follow the example of our ancestor,
right.
Abraham. And so I could almost imagine some of this is going to be a little bit of a summary of the previous 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. It means believing God for big things. It means making him number one. It means walking by faith, and a call to that as we move into the pledge time.
I love it. All right. So, I mean, you can see the clear moves. We don't know for sure yet, but I can only imagine that we will be gathering testimony stories. It feels like it's that kind of thing, especially since, at this 1 year mark, you're talking about stories of life change that have literally taken place since the One Initiative started. So there's a huge opportunity there to be able to celebrate what God has been doing. And so, be thinking about, the fact that that'll be included in the service flow as well as we're brainstorming creative content, both for the large group and for the small group components. So anything else we need to hit? All right. Well, thank you very much, Tammy. Thanks for being with us. Mm-hmm. And I've been Eric, and this has been the Big Idea Podcast. So long, everybody.